basically, I would like to tell you that today's theme, first of all. Okay, I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
I'm audible.
Yeah, perfectly fine.
Okay, fine. So today's theme is that the state-nation dilemma in South Asia. Okay, so in the particular talk, I will discuss the several areas of this issue, which is the cover the state-nation discourse, because it is a new discourse, because it is the this debate is shifting from the nation-state to state-nation. So in that particular talk, I will discuss first of all what is a state, then what is nation, what is nation state, then I will discuss about that what is the state nation conception, then after I will discuss about that what is South Asia, and why we are discussing and why South Asia become the vibrant region in the contemporary global politics. And it will be the sixth point which I will be discuss in my talk. And after that I will discuss that how can we understand the South Asian region, okay, historically, economically, and culturally, how we can understand. After that, what is the common project of the or objectives of South Asian nations? And after this I will discuss the nationalism in South Asia. And after that what is the dilemmas of state nation in South Asia, and after that I will conclude in my of my lecture. So here, first of all, I would like to discuss about the state. It is a very basically vibrant topic, and it is a very contextual topic in nature. So conception of state basically is the political association. We all know about very well about this, and which has the four fundamental characteristics like the geography, population, government, and the sovereignty. But the question is here, what is the role of state in South Asian region? This is the core issue for us today's discussion. So which types of model suitable for Asia? Here the developmental process of a state can be dealt through three dimensions. One, the process of nation building. Second, the socio-economic transformation, and the third one is that the mass line participation. So when we talk about the state in South Asian region, the big question is that state hasn't been evolved in this region. It is the basically imposed, it is the basically constructed notion in the South Asian region, and specifically we can say in a broader way we can say that it in a third world countries. So in this region, state become the instrument to fulfill the welfare and other the policies which is the, framed by the our state. So second, mass line participation. So mass line participation in South Asia, so is in basically procedural level, and then it is not a substantive level. So in third world, especially in the South Asia, the model of maximum state will be the better option, where the public sphere and the welfare policies framed and executed by the state. Now the second thing is that what is nation? The question always arises for in front of us. So what is nation? So nation we can define so very easily. Nation is the cultural notion basically. State is the political association, a political notion, and the nation is the cultural notion, which constitutes through common culture, common religion, common language, common history, common beliefs, common practices, territorial integrity ki baat we talks about that, ethnic community. And Benedict Anderson is the very leading theorist on the nationalism and the nation state conception, and is a very and is work is imagined community. So Benedict Anderson basically define what is nation. He said nation basically is the imagined political community. Nation is that the imagined political community where we don't know each other, but we constitute together, and we live together, when we feel together, we practice together, we follow the religious practice together. So it all the characteristics form the nation. So now the second thing is that what is the nation state? So nation state basically is a form of government where awareness and the attachment, two things is important in the particular the notion of the nation state: awareness and the attachment toward the single cultural civilizational tradition. Okay, and like single cultural identity. Secondly, we can give the example single legal language, and also we can say that unity of oneness. The conception of the nation state is basically based on the three characters. One is a single cultural identity. second, single legal language, and third, the unity of one nation. So nation state basically combine political authority with the cultural authority. This is the main character of the nation, the notion of the nation state. So in nation state concept, the driving force is culture. So here culture decide which type of state we want and which type of state we should establish and to which community will get recognition. Who will decide? Nation will decide. Okay, and other hand, the concept of the state nation, this is the emerging conception. Okay, and because is a very it is not very more academic work on that particular concept, because it is a very emerging conception. And the state nation, we can define state nation is a form of government where awareness and the attachment towards multicultural civilizational tradition. Okay, and it focuses on the multiculturalism basically. Okay, like multicultural identity, like multi-legal language, like diversity. When we compare with the nation state, the nation state focuses on the unity of oneness. Okay, and the integrated legal language. Okay, and the single cultural identity. So in that context, there's a difference between the nation state and the state nation. On the concept in the nation state nation, the driving force is the state. Here state is the basically pillar. State decide that which type of state we should establish and which types of state we want. Okay, and which community will get recognition and who will decide? State will decide. So in short, concept of the nation state basically focuses that nation should have own state. So in other hand, conception of the state nation focuses that the state should have own nations. So basically the state nation conception talks about the federal state, not integrated state. Now I'm shifting in our the particular zone. What is the South Asia? Okay, so South Asia, we all know about this region very well. Okay, because it's a very vibrant region, is a very conflicting zone in after the Arab. Okay, so South Asia is basically one of the oldest civilization in the world order, where people are different ethnic and the religious communities have worked together for the long time. So the cultural diversity of the region has given it a unique identity. This is the characteristics of the baseline characteristics of the South Asian state nations. Okay, so which is unique in the world. Okay, because this kind of the diversity we cannot find out in other western region. You can say the European region and Africa, we didn't find out this kind of the diversity. A huge diversity exists in the South Asian region. Okay, so South Asia and the Indian subcontinent are the synonymous which with each other. So the region was commonly referred to as the British Empire before the 1947. Okay, so South Asia is a basically group of the 7 independent countries: India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and the Maldives. We all know about it. So South Asia as a region share basically the multiple characteristics. One, the common history. They share common history. There is no difference between the history. This is all the common things happen in the Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives. The common history is there. Okay, the common religion. Okay, and after that the common practices, common socio-economic conditions. There is no difference between the socio-economic condition of the third South Asian nation states. And geopolitical union of nations. Basically the South Asia is a basically geopolitical union of the nation, and also they share the common culture. Okay, so South Asia in this process of the developing as a region. Okay, it is not a fully developed because it is a part of the third world states. Okay, and it is a developmental process. So South Asia today is a strategically important part of the world politics with the important implications for the international order. So since the 1990s, the South Asia, particularly India, we can take the example, has seen significant changes in economic policy making. We all know that the conception of the globalization introduced in that decade. Okay, so policy making is important to examine the reason of the global economy as well as the poverty and inequality exist in this region. So the other thing is that I want to discuss with you the nationalism in the South Asia. Okay, so it is a very important, and everyone discussing about the nationalism. What is the nationalism? Everybody define nationalism in a own way. Okay, because there is a no fixed definition of the nationalism. Okay, so the core question is here that what is the nationalism? Okay, so we can say nationalism is a ideology and is a political doctrine where the cultural identity works as a base for a state. Okay, so this is a simple way to define the conception of the nationalism in the particularly third word. Here I would like to tell you about the nationalism because there is a debate in the political science discipline, the end of the ideology. Okay, SM Lipset, Daniel Bell, okay, and the Robert E. Lane introduced this debate in that in 60s decade, okay, in the academics. And he says that there is a no ideology exist because there's the end of ideology. And why it's happened? Because the liberalism and the Marxism, two dominant ideology was existing. Okay, and when when liberalism facing challenge from the Marxism, and they started very clearly, very strategically in reform within the liberalism, and he started to adopt the characteristics of the Marxism, like he started to talk about the equal notion of the equality. Okay, and similarly the Marxism, basically when the Marxism faced the challenge from the liberalism, Marxism started reform within that, and he adopted some characteristics of the liberalism. And in that particular context, the Robert Elan, SM Lipset, and the Daniel Bell, he started to say that basically both our ideology basically adopted the characteristic with each other. So there's a no pure form. So that is why the end of ideology. But in the no in the context of the third world, specifically I would like to mention here that in the context of the third world, the Kant says that Kant basically proved that the ideology exists in the third world states, and that is that ideology is called the nationalism. Okay, because he says that in the third world the political behavior, okay, the human behavior, and the decision making process and policy framing basically affected from by the conception of the nationalism. And contemporary time we are basically watching this particular situation. So Anderson basically defined nationalism as a cultural activity, and a very structural theorist Gallner, in his very famous work Nation and State, he defined the nationalism as a cultural homogeneity. Okay, and he says that the political and the cultural unit should be equal. This is a definition is given by the structural theorist Gallner in his famous work Nation and State. Okay, so the history of the South Asia is a continuous history of thousands of years. We all know very well about this condition. So nature of the nationalism in the South Asia was constructive. It not only the mobilized people but also inspired them to make their contribution in the national reconstruction. So the task of providing leadership to this initiative was done by India, and which gave birth to one of the largest mass movement in the world. So this movement not only succeeded in the freeing it from the colonial control, and I'm talking about the freedom struggle. Okay, so colonial control and the exploitation, but also provided a well thought and systematic program for the independent India. So the example of India also provided inspiration to the colonies. Besides, the Indian nationalist movement raised the political consciousness in countries like the Nepal, and we can say that the Bhutan as well as the Maldives. And it also provided a well thought out systematic program for India. Okay, so BC Utpreti is a very effective work on the South Asia, especially on the nation and nationalism. He presented an analysis of the nationalism in South Asia in his article. The title is the article "The Nationalism in South Asia: Trends and Interpretation." It is published in the Indian Journal of Political Science, Volume 3. Okay, so there are various manifestations such as the secular nationalism. That another is that language national, cultural nationalism. We are talking about nowadays religious nationalism, aggressive nationalism, ultra nationalism. Okay, and thus the religious language, casteism, etc. Okay, and all the things basically elements of the nationalism in the South Asia. So nationalism in if we talk about in Indian context particularly, so nationalism in India represent liberal democratic secularism. Okay, so the Indian context, when we talk about that, the nationalism represents liberal democratic secularism as a political ideology that promotes the notion of unity. Okay, that promotes notion of the diversity. Okay, so the Indian national movement has been shaped by the Indian national movement, and its sources are historical traditions. Okay, nationalist movements, constitutions, democratic political institutions, secularism, notion of the freedom and equality, and modernization and development. So however, the emerging narrow trends of linguistic, ethnic, and the regionalism have created many distortions in that in this particular situation. So after emerging as an independent state, like the Bangladesh followed the liberal democratic framework and paved the way for the development of secular nationalism in the country. Similarly, it happened in a Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka found its roots in the struggle against the colonial rule, which was the represented by the Western educated elite. So, in the Sri Lanka's democratic regime began to adopt the religious cultural symbols of the majority, just like that Sinhalese and the Tamil debate is the going on in Sri Lanka. Okay, so on the other hand, the Nepal is also is a basic Nepal basically is the initial stage of the democratic development. Okay, and when the constitution of the Nepal is established in the 2015. Okay, and after that a very disturbing situation is going on in Nepal. So Nepal basically remained free from the colonial rule and occupation, so the role of the traditional symbols in shaping nationalism was not overly complicated. So the founders of the state of Nepal promoted the state religious identity and gave rise to Hindu nationalism. But now this is in the concept of the identity of the Hindu nationalism has been changed by the secular constitution, which is established in the 2015. Similarly, the situation is the happened in the Maldives. So Maldives basically has a homogeneous society. Maldives is a country of the Maga Iceland has a distinct identity. Okay, so in that particular situation, I can say that the nationalism in the South Asia has, in most cases, exhibited positive connotations and has been successful in establishing unity in diversity in the region. But at the same time, it has played a role in reinforcing linguistic ethnicity, separatist identities. Overall, it can be said that South Asian nationalism has both positive and the negative characteristics. After in last, I will discuss what is the positive and what is the negative. Okay, now I would like to shift on the another dimension, the dilemmas of Southeast state nation in South Asia. So South Asia, we all know. Earlier I told that it is the one of the world's oldest civilization, where people of all races and all religions have coexisted together for a long time. So this layer of the different culture has given South Asia as a unique identity. So basically, in that context, in a contemporary national and international politics, two perspectives dominate the issue of regional identity, the first being the idea of nation state and the second being the idea of the state nation. We know that the idea of the nation state is essentially a product of the Treaty of Westphalia, which is evidence 1648. But the state nation discussion and the discourse and discussion is a new phenomenon and discourse in the political science and international politics. So the state nation discourse is basically essentially the result of the end of colonialism as far as the distinctions between the nation state and the state nation is concerned. On the other hand, the state is the main agency in the idea of the nation, in which the state recognizes the demands of the different nationalities. So newly created independent states of the third world are still engaged in the relentless process of the national building. We all know about that. After the freedom, the India is also in the national building process. Okay, and Pakistan is a very worst situation. There's no stability, the political stability in Pakistan. Similarly, Bangladesh, the basically social movement is the started in Bangladesh. Maldives are similarly facing the problem. Nepal is also facing the problem. Okay, Sri Lanka also facing the huge problem. But they are all in a nation building process. This is not completed. Okay, so South Asian states are pluralistic in nature. Okay, there is no singular identity exist in this region. Okay, just like the Western state, just like the European state. In the third world, specifically the South Asian states, basically is a pluralistic in nature, as these states are divided into the various the ethnic, cultural, linguistic identities. So in a way, South Asian states have a rich cultural tradition as far as the state nation conflict in South Asia is concerned. So in the present scenario, all the South Asian states are facing state nation conflict. It is my basically observation, it is my analysis, is that the South Asian states are facing the state nation conflict, as all the South Asian countries as a nation. Okay, so they share common language, common culture, history, religion, but as a state they are all passing through that particular concept. A very famous intellectual, Professor T.K. Oman, in his very famous work State versus Nation in South Asia, linking language and the governance is the title of that work. Okay, he basically is a very basically important writer, and you can say that he's a very intellectual command of the nationalism and the nation state debate. He have basically emphasized on the state versus nation discourse in South Asia, and they believe that all the South Asian states are endowed with a multicultural, the multilinguistic, multi-ethnic, multi-religious characteristics. So Oman believes that the discourse of the state and nation in South Asia consider the national integration plan on the basis of three dimensions. One, the defining national identity through first constitutional provisions. This is a one. The second is that the relations between the different communities of the second state should be completed. The third one is that there should be political socialization through history education. So actually, Western concept of cultural homogeneity and a state nation is not suitable for South Asian state. Okay, because you made this particular structure and you are imposing us. Okay, how is it possible to it will be fit for us? It is not possible. Okay, and the thing is that the system should be evolved from the my side, then it will be it will work. If you are imposing, it will not work. Okay, so in that conditions, we can say that Western societies, their problems have no synergy or similarly between the problems and the conditions of the societies of the South Asian states. So reason for this, he says, is that South Asian states are full of cultural linguistic diversity, and to homogenize this diversity would be an anti-democratic process. So in South Asian state, an attempt has been made to say that state nation conflict in terms of ethnicity, in terms of communalism, and in terms of separatism. Okay, so in that particular context, the ethnic and the separatist problems are proving to the most challenging in the process of the state nation building process. So here I would like to tell you that what is the causes of state nation dilemma in South Asia. So there is a multiple causes. Okay, and South Asia has experienced the social, economic, the political development, but has been seriously affected by internal and the interstate conflicts. Internal conflict is going on, intra conflict is also going on in the South Asian nation states. So South Asia is the most populous region in the world with the highest ethnic, cultural, religious, linguistic diversity. So ethnic violence, okay, and the regionalism, prolonged military rule, religious conflict, sectarian violence, identity and the participation crisis, minority problems, security problems, etc., are among the major causes of state nation conflict or dilemma in South Asia. So one and all, these internal and interstate conflicts are basically hindering the establishment of a state nation in South Asia. So the core dilemmas of state nation are following. The first one is that the democratic deficit. We all know very about and before last 1 month we are basically watching the drama which is happening in the Pakistan. Okay, and similarly the drama happening in the Sri Lanka. Similarly, we are watching the drama in the Maldives. So democracy, first of all, I would like to define here what is the democracy. So democracy is a system of governance out of the 193 countries of the world, and 121 basically democratic today. 121 states are the democratic domain. But here I would like to specify then there the democracy is the liberal democracy, and that they are not basically providing the recognition the so to the towards the social democracy. So means that democracy means that the liberal democracy here. Okay, so this is the actually a progressive trend in the democratic society can be understood on the three grounds. One is the systematic functioning of the democratic institution, number one. The second is that improvement in social and economic conditions, and the third, the prosperous political society. So democracy is not a numerical concept, but it is an evolved concept. So there is a six fundamental principles for an integrated democracy can be stated. The one, the political choice. Second is the loyal opposition. The third is the free press. The fourth is the credible bureaucracy. Fifth, the fair judiciary and the civil society. Last one is that. Here, I would like to mention Professor Robert Dahl. And Robert Dahl has basically given five bases of the true or the genuine democratic system. Number one, political equality. Number two, inclusion is important. Third, the intellectual understanding should be there. Fourth one is that control over policies and the programs. And five, the effective participation. These all the five basically principles is the responsible for the true or the genuine democracy. Okay, so here I would like to tell you that and this, different south countries of South Asia do not have the same political system. Okay, in the Pakistan has a different, Maldives has a different, Nepal is a different, in an insular state, Bhutan is a different, Sri Lanka has a different, Bangladesh also is a different political system. So but after independence, most of the South Asian states adopted the representative democracy on paper. Okay, but they are not able to execute that particular structure. So all the South Asian countries have had a mixed experience with the process of democratization. Okay, and the general perception in this context is that the democracy has succeeded in India, and that India and Sri Lanka have been complaints of colonial rule in South Asia, failing in Pakistan. Okay, and yesterday we have, day before yesterday, we have watched the very interesting drama happening in the Pakistan Parliament. Okay, so it is happening in there. Okay, and further I will discuss that. So due to which they have faced serious problems of the economic and the social development. Despite this, both these countries remains the democratic. Okay, yet both the political system have been the repeatedly facing the subnational movements like the ethnic conflicts and the violent opposition from all the section of the society, which play the major role in generating a state nation conflict in the South Asia. So Pakistan and the Bangladesh on the other hand, okay, have faced the repeated military coups. Okay, Pakistan basically, we can talk about the Pakistan held general elections to legitimize the government, but as usual, the elected body was dissolved blankly. Although Bangladesh has been successful in the stabilizing a systematic democratic process since 1990s. Okay, in similarly, the Nepal experimentation with democracy has also been uncertain and was historically governed by the monarchical system in Nepal. So, but after the 1990s, under pressure from the pro-democracy movement, he accepted the demands for a democratic constitution, and the result was that in the 2015, the secular constitution of the Nepal basically declared. Okay, so is in small states like Bhutan and Maldives, the democratic system has not been really established. So this is the challenge for the South Asian region. So Professor S.D. Muni also basically presented his views on the development of democracy in South Asia. Is a famous, is the article is the famous, the new democratic web and the regional cooperation in South Asia. Okay, it is published in 2009. Okay, so Professor S.D. Muni says that there has been a democratic resurgence in the countries of South Asia, and all the South Asian states still have the democratic system. So all South Asian countries have chosen the democratic system, but this traditions to democracy is still fragile. And we, as there have been democratic failure in South Asia, such as the military coups in the Pakistan. It's a very huge example in front of us. Internal and external conflict also is basically going on in Pakistan. So it is a challenge to face the new wave of the democracy in South Asia if they are able to success to control all the things. The second dilemma is the ethnic conflict. So ethnicity, we all know about that, generally considered to be an organization of a group of people who share common characteristic in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of religion, in terms of history, in terms of basically practices. Okay, and are the distinct from any other group who have their own common characteristics. For example, here I can give example: mobilization on the basis of language, religion, caste, or tribe is the considered as an ethnic mobilization. So Dipankar Gupta is a very famous uh, basic academician, says that an ethnic group basically declares itself to be a true follower of faith in the territory of a nation. So in the context of ethnicity, two terms are used: first, ethnic Iceland, and the second, ethnic enclave. Okay, so what is the meaning of the ethnic Iceland? The ethnic Iceland means a group of people living in a large population area. For example, Germans who live in a south central Texas. Okay, and Texas and a US state is a group of the Germans, and ethnic enclave means people, a group of persons residing in the city in a territory. So this is the difference between the ethnic Iceland and the second is the ethnic enclave. So the conflict between the different ethnic groups has created widespread problems in the national integration process and also a state nation building process in South Asia. And South Asian states have attempted to control these ethnic conflicts through a state supported process, and that we call state nation building in South Asia. Okay, so these ethnic conflicts have given rise to intra-state conflict in South Asia, and its basis is that number one, the autonomy movement; second, demand for a separate nation; and then third, rebellion; and the fourth, the struggle on the basis of identity symbols like tribal language and religion, etc. So overall, ethnicity in one of the most challenging condition in South Asian states. So ethnic conflict cast basically doubt on the veracity of state nation building models in countries of the South Asia. Okay, then in that particular situation, I would there is a lots of hindrance for the countries of South Asia to be established as a state nation. Okay, and the third is the third dilemma is that interference of superpower. We all know about this situation in South Asian region. The major superpowers, just like the US, just like the Russia, okay, and China is also basically interfering in the South Asian region. And also you all know about very well that China is trying to become the member of the SARC, and they continuously is applying. Okay, and the pressure is creating. Okay, so interference of superpower is also is a dilemma in the state nation building process in the South Asia, because they are disturbing, they are basically affecting the foreign policies of the South Asian nation states, and they are also affecting the policies of the nation state, South Asian nation state. Another is that political instability in the South Asian region. It is also a state nation dilemma. Okay, this is the barrier, okay, in the front in a way of state nation building in the South Asia. Political instability, just like the 2 days before that you have seen the Pakistan, what happened in Pakistan. Okay, and all the things, basically the main you can say that the main player is behind the curtain. Okay, and that is the called army in Pakistan. Similarly, the social movement has started in Bangladesh, and this is also creating the political instability. Similarly, in Nepal, okay, the Communist Party trying to create the political instability in the Nepal. And after the 2015, the continuously and the political instability is the going on. And on that reason, the Nepal hasn't been able to develop effectively. Okay, and the fifth one is that the terrorism is also basically dilemma in the way of the state nation building process in South Asia, because the South Asian region is facing the huge terrorism, terrorist basically activities. So, in for example, India is the basically also facing the terrorist activities in in a particular territory. Okay, and the security dilemma is also a dilemma of the in establishment of the state nation in South Asian region. So geographically, the great range of South Asia mountains is a natural strategic entity bounded by the Himalayas in the north, the Karakoram and the Hindu Kush, okay, to the southeast, and the Indian Ocean to the west. Okay, so historically, the people of this region have been closely related by the caste, culture, religion, and the political allegiance. Okay, so political boundaries in South Asia are not fixed. The region has had various centers of political power. In the 19th and the 20th centuries, the British not only occupied the South Asian region but also the areas that are now part of West and Southeast Asia as well. So this was the time in South Asia when the political boundaries were drawn on ethnic linguistic communities. So in a way, the territorial boundaries of the seven countries of this region are the boundaries set by the colonial rule. Okay, so there are seven movements which I want to discuss here. Separatist movement, second movement demanding autonomy, the third the movement for the decentralization of political and the economic rights. Another one, the mobilization for the rights of sons of the land, and another one, the mobilization to overcome social anomalies, and mobilization against emerging political alliances in the South Asia. So Tamils in Sri Lanka, Maoists in Nepal, Chakmas insurgents in the Bangladesh are the creating security dilemma in these states. So after that, vested interest of South Asian nations is also creating dilemma in the way of the state nation building process. Okay, so in the conclusion mark, I would like to say that South Asian countries have two aspects. First, positive, and the second, negative. Talking about the positive aspect of the South Asian countries, there has been social, political, and the economic development of the region, and then adoption of a democratic system in a various South Asian countries is a positive aspect. This is the positive aspect. But and on the other hand, the ethnic conflict is there, communal conflict is there, coups of elected governments by military rule, state and interstate, and we can say interstate and the state, okay, and intra-state conflicts of conflict is there, conflicts of security also is a problem, separatism is the problem in South Asia, regionalism is also problem in South Asia, and etc. So all these highlight is a negative side of this in South Asia. So and all these, you are no giving birth to state nation conflict in the countries of the South Asia, so due to which serious problems are arising in front of the state nation process in this region. To establish a strong democratic system would be a serious effort to put an into religious conflict and separatist movements. So here I would like to give some suggestions for the successfully establishment of the state nation as a South Asian nation established as a state nation. One is the political stability is a very important. Without political stability, we cannot imagine the state South Asia will be established as a state nation. The second is that substantive democratic setup is a very important thing there. Okay, without the substantive democratic setup, we cannot establish the state nation, the state nation process. Okay, now South Asian states as a state nation. Okay, why? Because we are talking about the democracy in a procedural way, we are not talking about the substantive way. So this is the problem in the South Asia. And after that, recognition of the different nations or identities, this is the important factor, because these are the communities, and this is the ethnic communities are creating the problems for establishment of the state nation. Okay, so all this my suggestion from the my side, and those students who want to interest to study about in South Asia, they can read Professor T.K. Oman, and his the title his work is that State versus Nation in South Asia, Linking Language and Governance. Okay, he can read the Professor Ahmad Ishtiaq, State, Nation and Ethnicity in South Asia. They can read the Benedict Anderson, The Imagined Community. They can read the Gallner Okay, they can read the a Professor H.D. Muni, Democracy Development and Discontent in South Asia. Okay, so they are, if the students are interested, they can go for it. And thank you for my side. And now open for. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Hello, Vikas, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, yeah. So it's over from side now. It's over to you.
Lost the connection, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, sir, thank you very much for your valuable time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.